Hi, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to the SoPro Brief. I'm Luann Edwards. I'm a strategic social media marketing consultant based in Providence, Rhode Island. And the SoPro Brief is designed for you to join conversations about human connection, technology, communications in a live setting with some really interesting guests. Now, today we are recording, it's New Year's Eve. So if you're watching this on the replay, Happy New Year. 2020 is on its way out, and we're starting fresh for 2021. As we go through this conversation, feel free to ask questions in the comments. And if you're watching it on the replay, still ask some questions in the comments and we'll come back and answer them later. So I am pleased to be joined today by Megan Boyaval, who is the founder of Bowstring Group. And I'm going to bring her on screen to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about the work that she does. Hi, Megan, welcome.
Hi, Luann. Thank you for having me. We always have such good conversations, and it's exciting to be, this is my first live event, and so I'm happy to be doing it with you.
Welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here on the SoPro Brief. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your work in Bowstring.
Bowstring is really me and a network of really wonderful specialists, including yourself. And I work with companies, small business leaders, large companies, divisions of larger companies, to really articulate what they need to say to attract new customers, new clients, new donors. And so a lot of my work is around editorial strategy, messaging, value proposition development, and then carrying that strategy through to the execution of really great content, of course, measuring it, making sure you know when you've hit on a good topic, because you see things just go viral with engagements and clicks and downloads in this very measurable digital world. And so I'm really happy to be having this topic, talking about this topic, because it's something that's very near and dear to my heart.
Yes, and our topic today is using customer insights to power editorial strategy. And this is sort of an organic conversation that we're having because 2020 was just not at all what we expected. We thought, I don't know about you, but I walked in thinking 2020 is my year. It's kind of like that meme that's going around. Like 2020 is going to be my year. And it was for a bit. And then it was a year. So why do you think this is an important topic for us to dive into, especially as we go into 2021?
I mean, my 2020 was bananas, as I think a lot of marketers felt like. March hit and all of our strategies were needing to be re-examined. Maybe they were completely upended. Imagining and reframing in real time. And it was, an eye-opening year. It was, I think, a year where many businesses realized their potential for innovation. And also, I think, going back to their core of what really matters and what do they do. And sales were hard. So everything seemed harder. We were all inundated with a million messages. How do you do a webinar strategy when everybody doesn't want to join another Zoom? Email fatigue is definitely a thing. And so I think about, setting intentions at this year after a really tumultuous, game-changing year, and think about, the editorial strategies of my clients. And you ask the question of what should we do? What should we be talking about? How are we going to grow our business? How are we going to grow our brand? How are we going to grow engagement, awareness? And it's a wonderful time to kind of go back to your roots of what is my value proposition and what do my audiences need in this uncertainty or brand new, ecosystem, whatever your business is that you're operating in. And so for me, I always think about going back to your client base, your customer base, your donor base, the people who already do business with you, as being a ready-made wellspring of information and inspiration for, what do your audiences need? How has their world changed, and how can you be relevant to them? And so, from my perspective, finding a way to ask your customers and check in with them is, a gold mine of information to inform the editorial strategy that you plan for 2021.
I think that's just a great explanation of how it all ties together in this year, that there's just so much uncertainty. And what's nice to remember too, right? I think, and you touched on this, is that our customers are experiencing this as we are. So we're all, there was no playbook for a pandemic that completely changed our lives for, nearly a year. And so taking our cues from our customers really does provide insights that we can use to navigate. And it's happening in real time, right? So that feedback happening in real time helps us sort of navigate in real time. So let's go into sort of the first question I wanted to chat through, which is, how do you gain customer insights, right? Because it sounds like, I don't want to say it sounds simple, because it's not, but it sounds like, okay, let's just do this. But there's so many different ways you can, right? There's so many different approaches. And so when I think about customer insights from a social media perspective, whenever I approach a new project, the first thing we do is we do a listening tour, basically, or a listening exercise, where we are starting with the customer, right? Because, or in that case, like a community member or the user or the member. And we want to really understand, like, what are they talking about? What are the topics that are important to them? Because whatever we do has to speak to that. With social media, you vote with your clicks, right? And with a lot of marketing, you vote with your clicks. So it's really important for us to have a good understanding of that. And I know you know that well too. So what advice would you give marketers? Like, what are some of the first steps you would take to gain those insights?
It's funny. I feel like I have relearned this lesson over and over and over again in my career, that I've worked with teams and workshopped, storyboards and editorial strategies with a really savvy group of like internal team members who are customer facing, so they really understand the customer and the client, and you can get to pretty good insights that way. But there is just nothing like actually asking your customers directly. There are easy ways, and then there are in-depth ways. And I think it's about right-sizing your listening strategy, and what you're doing, what you were just talking about with listening and doing a audit is absolutely like an essential component of, a listening plan and a research plan. I would also say triangulate that with doing, a survey. Like, it's so easy, and it's almost like Net Promoter surveys are so commonplace that I sometimes wonder if the people who receive them don't already know the system. But I do feel like simplifying a way of quantifying customer equity, and also asking a couple of open-ended questions that won't get overwhelming for the analysis, can actually provide tremendous insights quickly and give you a direction, like a jumping off point. And so, you would understand a question of, why do you work with us? What's your likelihood to recommend us, and why? And you'll get insights that will be relevant to your marketing program, but also to your customer service team. Sorry.
That's okay.
You will get information relevant to your product strategy. You'll kind of have this light touch across your entire customer base, donor base, client base, that gives you like kind of a baseline to know where to go deeper. And then I am a huge advocate for customer interviews. And so customer interviews can be tricky. You have to manage them appropriately, coordinate with your customer client service manager. But getting on an open-ended call with a customer to ask questions that are outside of the transactional way that you work with your customer, it builds esteem actually with your customer, and it makes them feel like their opinion is valued, that you're listening, that they're playing a role in your future development. And then those interviews, they're always well worth the investment in the time and the coordination, and then the distillation of the findings, and then sharing it with probably your executive team to digest. Okay, these are the things that we're hearing from our customers now. What are we going to do about them? How do we respond? And you will also see in that interview repository that you'll see themes and patterns emerging about what your customers value in their relationship with you, and then also what your customers are struggling with in their professional life, in their personal life. I mean, all of it is kind of relevant information for you.
Yeah. And in 2020, that's especially true, right? There isn't really that clear delineation anymore of like personal professional. I mean, yes, you have boundaries like everybody, but we're working from home, and we're, managing multiple things during the workday now because of different protocols for COVID and all of the different changes we're experiencing. So really having an understanding of that sort of holistic view of your customer and the challenges they're facing, that is really important and especially relevant. I also think about, I want to echo what you said about just even asking your customers to give their feedback. It builds esteem. It shows them that they're valued, that you respect their opinion. So they're not just a customer, but they're, sort of an informal advisor, and they're helping, they're part of, it helps them maintain that connection with your organization. They're a part of it, right? They help build it in a small way. I also think about social media has the opportunity to do really quick, short check-ins with customers and potential customers, right? Prospective clients, with whether it's like a short survey or a poll, right? Polls can be pretty effective, especially for like just a quick check-in, right? Quick pulse check. What do you think of this topic? Or what do you feel about this process? Or how do you like this brand element that we're testing out? If it's appropriate, like that's the type of thing, but it's also a good way to connect with people you can ask one question, but it can be completely unrelated to your business or your product, but it gives your customers an opportunity to talk to you and to tell you a little bit about them. And it also gives you insight to what's important to them. And that does lead back into your business. So, for example, I think I had asked my network just a quick question of, what's important to you? What's your it was kind of lighthearted. Like, what's the star ingredient of your quarantine cooking? And I was like, mine is olive oil. And so it was touched a little bit on sort of my background and my interest as an individual, but it also gave my, network, whether it's clients, prospective clients, colleagues, the opportunity to sort of share that with them. And it helped me understand sort of where everybody was in this process, this very strange year, right? This really challenging year.
Open up. I mean, the connections that, we're all stuck in our homes, and, having an authentic connection with even a vendor. I mean, we're in business and we're in a partnership with each other. So, bridging that professional to personal barrier is frankly important. I loved your idea about the polling, because, you can kind of hone in on the topics that way, but then you can also poll your customers to know what matters to them. And then in essence, that becomes research that you can share. It's like a benchmark study that you can use as content. So kind of using social listening and polls in many different ways. It's like you get insights that you need to shape your editorial strategy, and you get the content. It's like a double win.
It really, and again, it's that multi-way communication. It's having people connect with you and give their feedback. It's valuing that feedback, And there's also other ways social customers give you insights that are not that might be indirect, right? Like what kind of content is already resonating with them, or what kind of things are they sharing that they clearly find interesting. So even the indirect things, like just how it's performing, how content is performing, or what's performing for other people in your industry, other potential competitors or whatever. These are all indirect insights that you can at least base hypotheses on and build on as you continue to do research and listening.
Well, and there's insights even in silence. Like if you are posting and you're not getting any engagement from your customers, maybe you're not on the wrong platforms, or maybe you're not sharing in a way that feels authentic. Nobody wants to be sold to. So if you are continuously kind of putting out social posts or content that is an advertorial for your work and services, and you're hearing crickets, it's a sign.
Yeah, or if you're sharing a post on social and you're getting a lot of engagement on the post itself, but the call to action isn't driving action. It could be that they really love your brand, but not what you're offering in that particular post. So yeah, it's I'm probably echoing exactly what you're saying, but it's the indirect messages that you can take from your analytics and your listening activities, which we could spend hours talking about, right? Like there's just so many potential ways you can take that information, and just learn so much. So,
go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead and I'll go to our next question.
I was just going to talk about your point about CTAs. And I'm kind of like, there are a lot of marketers who will say that every email, every social post has to have a CTA. I'm a little bit less strict about that. And I would say that sometimes, I've had an experience, this was a while back, but I had done a survey of a large customer base that revealed that customers had a lot of, economic forecasting questions. And so my client and I created these kind of generous, expertise-driven emails that was just about our read of the industry and what was happening. And, everything was economic bellwethers that were publicly available, but it was filtered through my client's voice as a leader. And we didn't have a download. We didn't have a CTA. It was really just about sharing information because of in response to a customer question, and really to build awareness and brand and engagement. And it was shared generously. And we only heard, we could see opens, but certainly not clicks because there was no CTA. And so, but we did hear anecdotally, which is also an important piece of your listening closed loop factor, to hear questions of like, oh, it was really nice to hear from you. And it was a personal message, and there's value in that especially for companies that have long relationships with their customers and their buyers and their clients. So I'm all for CTAs, but it's not always necessary.
Yeah. So David, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. He put in the comments that personal connection with your clients builds deeper relationships. It's a great point. Yeah, agreed. So just a reminder, anybody who's tuning in, please feel free to add questions in the chat whenever you have one that comes up, or a comment. So how do you know if you're asking the right questions? Oh, hey, before we move on to that, I want to go back to your comment on CTAs, because I share that philosophy that you don't have to always have a CTA, but you should know where it fits in your strategy, right? Like you should always have a goal, but the goal may not be the viewer, the recipient has to take an action, right?
Yeah.
And go through a certain process. Certainly there's a place for it, and it should fit in, but it doesn't have to be every single time.
Well, and know what your dominant CTA is. So it may be, I've worked with medical providers, and they really want people to pick up the phone and make an appointment to become a client or a patient. but it's inappropriate to push a lot of like download this ebook, at that stage. So, but also signing up for our newsletter is a rather lackluster CTA. So how do you kind of fill the gap?
Mhm.
And I think, sharing information freely, webinars, copious blogs, videos are wonderful. And, you can just push that out and it builds trust to get somebody to that CTA. I've had a lot of clients who don't have kind of like complete closed loop tracking
Mhm.
of how their clients like engage with their content and then turn into customers. And so you kind of have to agree to know what it'll feel like if it is working. Like, is the phone going to ring more? And
Yes.
that's fine. It's working.
Right. Are you having more time spent on page related to these
Yeah.
products that you're really promoting?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can infer it that gives you a clue that things are moving in the right direction. So yeah, it's not uncommon, I guess.
Yeah.
So as we're asking our customers for insights, or maybe even in our internal processes, how do we know we're asking the right questions?
Oh, I mean, this is the $1,000,000 question to answer a question with a question. But so let's just say for the sake of interviews, surveys are one thing. I like to start out a survey by asking a question that gives you a quantifiable result of how are we doing. And that's why I do love the Net Promoter methodology.
Mhm.
There's customer effort as well. There's other ways to measure that, but get something quantifiable and then follow it up with an open-ended question in a survey. And the classic Net Promoter is, what's your reason for this score? And so you'll understand if somebody is angry, the reason for the score will tell you what they're dissatisfied about. If they are thrilled with your service, their answer will be what you do so well and why you're indispensable to them. So that's for surveys. With interviews, especially when I'm interviewing my clients' customers, which in and of itself has tremendous value when you're not asking your customers yourself, but you're hiring a third person a third party to interview your clients. You get a lot more information, and um, it really shows your customers that you're taking this feedback mechanism very seriously. So when I'm asking my clients' customers questions, I think it's really fine to start out with the most simple question, which is, why are you doing business, or why do you get services? Why do you do business with this company? And then you should have like a lineup of a questionnaire, but also be open to knowing, like, to following some threads of where the conversation leads. So ask a broad opening question, follow the threads. And then, for the questionnaire, like when you're prepared, when you have the right preparations, I think about the questions to me, because I'm usually doing strategy, marketing, editorial, value proposition. The interview is going to feed into a lot of elements of the marketing strategy. And so I'll ask the question of, how are you doing? What's changed this year?
Yes,
Check
yes.
in with you,
Yep.
um, and ask that question in two ways. One is you personally and
Mhm.
professionally, and then how has our work been relevant to you this year or changed this year? So asking the question of checking in a couple of different ways so that they know that you're asking about them as people, not
Mhm.
just as in relation to your work together, leads to a lot of interesting conversation openers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and even like in my own consulting practice, when I'm working with a new customer, I always sort of start out with getting to know them. And one of the questions I always ask is, what are the challenges you're facing in a particular area of your work that may not be related to social media marketing or marketing in general, because sometimes I can find a solution under my in my area of expertise that solves something that they aren't even thinking is related. So I try to even be, I don't do too many of those, because then it starts to become a bit overwhelming for the instrument, but and for the person taking it. But I do find that some of those reveal like those nuggets that you weren't quite expecting, and it's like, I have a solution for that. This is going to make your life a lot easier. And
well,
I think
also understand how stressed are they about their business? Like, are they on the ropes?
yeah.
You need to know that. And, so asking more questions, that aren't just related to social or editorial, that allows you as a consultant, as a advisor, to employ other tools that, solve other problems than what they think they're coming to you with.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to speak for you, but I will say that oftentimes we end up finding problems that can be solved that we weren't even thinking of, or that because none of our work stands alone, right? Like you said it, right? Like we're doing work in, say, the marketing space and research, but we're supporting and helping and influencing all of these other areas of the business. I think it's all like intertwined. So so it's a lot of great benefits that come with this process.
And I mean, to piggyback on that, it's like, do an employee survey.
Yes.
Ask your employees just as much as you're asking your customers. Your employees will be telling you things, and you can almost match the themes that you're hearing from employees to your customers.
Yeah. And so that's a great segue to our next question is, what if we don't have access to these customers or these clients? I'd love to ask them these questions, but how? So what are some tips that we could offer? I think I think you've answered it really at the start, which is like actually survey your employees or your colleagues, particularly those who are interfacing with those customers or clients.
I think you can also yes, absolutely. And you have a million tools in your bag of tricks to do listening. But I would also say that, this is where the importance of knowing your personas comes in. And so you may not have access to your customers, but you can find people who represent, proxies or other ways, like industry associations might be a wonderful way to understand and kind of reverse engineer what are the industry associations talking about in their annual conference, which is probably virtual this year. And so there's definitely many ways to get creative.
Yeah. And a simple way using social that you can do that from the outside is to go on Twitter, find the conference hashtag, and see what people are talking about. I mean, it's quick, it's easy, it's search. You can save a search on Twitter. You can create a thread if you're using a listening tool. Like it not only surfaces the topics, but the people who are talking about it. So win-win on that one for sure.
Yeah. Like if you're in a B2C space and the work is e-commerce shipping, like your customers may not be identified to you. Like it's, so that's where, coming up with a persona. And this is also where I love to use social to test and learn and to test different messages. So I think of social being a content proliferation and engagement conversation platform, but it's also a research tool. So I think that can also help you get better inside the mind of your client if they haven't necessarily raised their hand or are known to you.
Yes. Looking for groups around certain topics or industries on LinkedIn and Facebook and other places are also a great way to get insights, just by popping in and sort of listening in. Social, there's so many opportunities too.
Another easy hack is just to use Google's AdWords tool, because
such a great reminder. Yes.
You can think you know what people are asking for, but people actually type out long form questions in Google. And so looking at the long tail search results around a topic is an amazing way to get customer insights and inform your editorial strategy. Just write a blog headlined about all of those long tail searches about what your customers are really asking about. Is it about price? I have so many clients who are reluctant to talk about price openly. And it's like, if that's one of the top search terms, you should talk about it.
Right,
Blog
right.
about it. You should blog about what goes into the pricing scenarios and the budget scenarios. So
yeah, it's one of my main pieces of advice for any client is answer the questions. So
yes.
whatever your questions are, write down your FAQs, write down things you think your clients know but don't, and those are the things you answer. So you have to figure out a way to not be uncomfortable about some of those things because people are, it's a point of friction. It's an obstacle getting in the way. So, okay, final topic. Now that I have all of these great insights, what do I do with them? Right? So we have just talked about so many ways we can get so many pieces of information, and it can be a lot, right? Especially if you have a lot of tools. So I'll start. My process is to sort of take a step back and look and say, okay, what are some of the themes? How can I bucket some of this information? And then, as you said, understanding your personas, that's really the thread throughout here. Like really know who your customers are and what's important to them and what their questions are and points of friction, and start to slot those into these buckets. How about you, Megan? What's some of your process?
Okay, so I'm going to be just totally honest and say that I'll do Excel, use Excel.
Yeah.
I'll use Post-it notes. I'll,
Index
map
cards.
over a whole wall.
Mhm.
There's nothing like finding a way to see patterns, like use color, try to, bucket themes, as you say, and then use keep all the language that was coming from your research. So it's a back and forth of organization, heat mapping, really understanding how a concept fits and may get interpreted in different ways to different personas. So I think, it's kind of a back and forth of analysis and then turning that into an editorial plan. And I usually create my editorial plans with a mix of content types, light and breezy, and lead magnets or major campaigns, and make sure that you're tagging all the in-betweens, all the blogs, so that you are making sure that you're hitting on something for every persona. So I'm just an Excel power user, but there's definitely plenty of tools. You can use a marketing automation platform, and it depends on the level of sophistication of your company and your marketing capabilities. So,
yeah, and I sometimes go old school and I take out my color, index cards, and I just write everything out, and then I start to organize. I'm a planner by heart training, so I put them all out and then I start to slot them in. So it's sort of like Excel, but with the paper first and then transition to digital. And that's when some of my greatest ideas come too. And I'm sure you too, as you start to organize that, it's like, oh, that goes with this, but it also could go here. And here's all these great things we can do with it. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the work is to get those ideas and start to really plot them out. So that is it for our questions and our topics today. So I will, give it over to Megan after wishing everybody a happy new year. I hope that you are well and healthy and have an amazing 2021. And Megan, happy new year to you. Thank you for joining.
Happy New Year. This was a great way to just think about the year that we've just went through and what are our intentions for 2021. And I think, listening is a tool that, and asking the right questions is definitely something that will never steer you wrong.
Yeah. So to recap, know your personas, know you're asking the right questions, go to your customer. And if you can't, use secondary tools, including, consulting with your internal folks, and then create a plan based on some of the themes and concepts that come through, and make sure you're tying it back again to your personas and your goals. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. See you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
Bye.
you, Anne.
Thanks, Megan.